Welcome back, guys. I trust you've been good. Now, the case of Ruby Frankie is still evolving, and as of today, the mother of six has been charged with 6 counts of felony child abuse, waiting for her day in court on Friday. Also charged along with her is her business partner, Hildebrandt. And I think that it's fitting that business partners share the risk. And in this case, they are literally sharing the risks and fruits of the labor of their so-called business, which had to do with mainly talking about parenting and the best way to train up a child, so to speak. These two women are facing 6 counts of felony child abuse leveled against them. Each, may I dare to say, each of them are facing this. And as at the last video I did when this case broke, we weren't yet sure at the time who the kids in question were, because as the case has evolved, it turns out that Ruby Frankie and Hildebrandt have been shooting videos on the premises of Hildebrandt's house for their channel called Connections. And during one of such events or such sessions, a child climbed out of a window and went to a neighbor's house asking for food and water. It was determined that this child climbed out of a window from Hildebrandt's house. So at the point, we were not yet sure whether it was Ruby Frankie's kid or it was rather Hildebrandt's kid. But it turns out that this particular kid, who would later be determined to be very emaciated, malnourished, and poorly kept, is actually Ruby Frankie's 12-year-old son. Yeah, and that is where everything is going haywire from. Aside her previous reputation, or let me say her previous controversial reputation on the 8 Passengers YouTube channel, and even by extension to the Connections channel itself. This puts everything full circle because there was that prior history already, only for her 12-year-old son to now crawl out of a window and go to a neighbor's house begging for food and water, and looks very emaciated and had traces of having been bound by duct tape and all. And they brought the police in. Police came, searched the premises, and it turns out another kid was found there. And it turns out that is her 10-year-old daughter, also in a similar state. So that's just to give you a recap of what brought us to this point. And as it stands now, each of them have been charged with 6 counts of felony child abuse, awaiting their first day in court. Ruby Frankie has sought legal representation, but it's not yet clear whether Hildebrandt has sought legal representation yet. Ruby's lawyer declined to speak on the case, but I was just going through the whole thing, and I think that this case is going to be a very difficult one, mainly for Ruby Frankie to beat. But then, again, I was wondering, would that really be the case? Because I'm sure, or I think at the point, some of her videos on the internet will come into play. And if that is going to be the case, I don't know how the laws of the United States will play out on this, but in my layman's thinking, I was just asking myself, if we are being told not to believe some of the things we see on the internet, how are we now going to be able to get certain footages from her past channel, the 8 Passengers channel, which she actually ran with her then husband and 6 kids, and those videos are going to be used as a form of evidence against Ruby Frankie, unless they don't resort to that. But if they resort to that, I see the defense might also come in and try to puncture holes, trying to talk about, nah, maybe they were just acting it up. I'll come to the other bit about what her daughter has come to say after her arrest and all, and other extenuating circumstances and other testimonies from her neighbors which seem to suggest a strong case could be built from that angle, which I don't dispute. But her daughter was talking about people should try and get videos to prove some form of evidence in a way during her social media post that she put out. And she was actually sort of sighing and talking about, at long last, finally somebody's paying attention and help has come now, and that somebody is going to address the issue. The police are in now. People also went on to express concerns about how they were happy now after reporting so many times to child support services about the things that were going on inside the house of Ruby Frankie with regards to how she was raising her kids, and that some of them were even afraid if the security force didn't intervene, there could be a time when the kids may actually have been carried out from the house in a body bag. So you could see that there is a large group of people who had taken strong concerns against how Ruby Frankie was going about her parenting. But on the bit about the videos circulating, in as much as some of the videos look very odd, some of them look very distasteful, I think that there could be a possible chance that Ruby Frank's attorney could talk about the fact that these were scripted videos and they were acting. Yeah, I think those are possible arguments that could come up. Not to say that it would be successful in court though, but if the claim has been that don't believe everything you see on the internet, then we might as well not believe videos from the internet trying to be used as evidence, especially when these are not videos sort of coming from a certified point which can say that this is not scripted and this is an actual thing that was happening. For example, the say a footage from a police dash cam or a footage from a police officer's camera fitted to him. These things, it's difficult to sort of dispute because they are capturing the real action. But with regards to a YouTube video that has been put out there, I don't know what the legal status is on how credible or how strong it will stand in court as a form of evidence, especially when it's about a family going through their day and a parent seeming to take charge of whatever the content is to be put out. These are things that I'm thinking could be possible to be used in Ruby Frank's defense, but honestly, I don't think that would guarantee any form of success for her defense because aside the video evidence, there are also testimonies from neighbors who have raised several concerns, have called child services. Child services has actually been there reportedly several times, left notes and all, because they couldn't gain access to the house. So it raises a lot of concern. And as we speak, the other four kids or other four minor kids of Ruby Frankie have also been taken over by child services. And for those who are not aware, even though Ruby Frankie and her husband were running the 8 Passengers channel, they actually divorced. They've been divorced for about 13 months now, or let me say separated, sort of, for about 13 months now. And when this case came up, her husband is actually saying he was not aware she was doing this. Now, I'll sit on the fence on this one and ask some questions because I'm wondering, how did the separation even happen in the first place? Two, irrespective of how it happened, how has it been after the separation between the husband and Ruby Frankie and their kids? Because even if you are separated or divorced, I'm sure there's a form of arrangement with regards to parenting of the children and how to go about seeing the kids for each parent. Granted, the kids were staying with Ruby Frankie. The husband, I don't think, can tell us that he never saw the kids after that separation about 13 months ago. And if he did see the kids, in what condition did he see the kids in? And when did he last see these kids? I think these are valid questions this man has to answer, because he cannot just excuse himself by saying he was not aware. I think investigations, and I'm sure these investigations are already going on, and if they are, I think they are in the right sense. They should go on to establish whether truly this guy was never aware, or he was aware but he just turned a blind eye, in which case it would make him equally culpable, or culpable to an extent, because his silence or his willful blindness allowed it to continue, if he was. Because then how was he getting to see his kids? How was he examining them? Again, other questions also come to mind. Like, for example, why were the kids in Ruby Frankie's partner's house instead of Ruby Frankie's own house? It doesn't make sense. Unless Ruby Frankie was actually keeping them there because she had attracted too much attention to herself and her premises, and she wanted to sway that attention away from her by keeping these kids at her partner's house, being Hildebrandt. Now, Hildebrandt also is a co-host, a business partner with Ruby Frankie on Connections, where they were still talking about these seemingly weird and controversial parenting tactics. And I don't think it's also a coincidence that these kids were actually living the practical side of the theoretical content that was being put out on Connections in the same premises that the Connections content was being shot by Ruby Frankie and her partner, Hildebrandt. So the whole thing is a complicated plot, because others are also suggesting that there could be the possibility that Ruby Frankie herself might actually have been a victim of Hildebrandt, or a proud victim of abuse, or she was just having good intentions running her channel, and maybe the divorce or separation from her husband got her to spiral, at which point mental health comes in. Do you buy any of these, or do you agree with any of these, or do you think there is even the slightest possibility that any of these could be possible as a defense for Ruby Frankie? Well, if you ask me, I'll tell you not so much. I don't. I think that she was quite aware, or fully aware, of what was happening, especially since these were her own kids. And granted, they were not in her own house. They were still in a house tied up with duct tape and all. And she was also in that house shooting a video about certain seemingly drastic parenting measures. And her being a mother, definitely she's expected to know the whereabouts of her kids. So you can't tell me you are in the same house, although someone's houses do, but you are still in that house and your kids are in bondage somewhere within the house, malnourished, bound, and tied with duct tape, and you never was aware. I don't think she can claim that. I don't think that she can claim that. Now, for Jodi Hildebrandt, I don't know. I feel like her seemingly being the elder of the two women, she should even know much better, especially since she's a counselor too. People have tried to drag in the Mormon religion, given that Ruby Frankie is a Mormon and all, but I don't think that this is a case that borders on religion. I know some few Mormons, and I don't see what Ruby Frankie is doing in how they go about with their families. So I don't think this has anything to do with the Mormon church. I think this is something about two individual women devoid of religion, who themselves are theoretically pushing controversial parenting techniques and advices on their channel, and then seemingly practicalizing it on the kids of one of the women who hosts the show, by name Ruby Frankie. That is what I suspect was happening, although, like I said, in every case, the person is presumed innocent until proven guilty in court. And I have a strong feeling that Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt are not going to beat this case. As to whether her husband will be pulled in, I think investigations may be ongoing and that will determine whether he will be pulled in or not. Because for me, I think it's more likely that he knew something than it is likely that he didn't. And if he did know something, it should be determined exactly what he knew and whether it was enough for him to have taken an action, which he didn't. In which case, I think he shouldn't just be left off the hook. These are my 2 cents. And I think that the duct tape could also be an advantage for investigators because if you are familiar with duct tape, it's a very good tool for collection of evidence, sometimes unintentionally, because if those duct tapes are scanned for fingerprints, who knows? It could turn out there are other accomplices, not just Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt. It could turn out other fingerprints could come in. And mostly in cases like this, I always open myself up for surprises because sometimes the case starts and you think that is all it is, only for other bombshells to start dropping during investigations and you realize, oh my God, this is bigger than we initially thought it was. This case has the propensity of getting to that point if it turns out that there were other people in the know, but they either turned a blind eye or they partook in it but were not on site when the issue started unraveling. What do you think? Which of Ruby Franke's parenting techniques did you ever agree with? I don't agree with any of it. I felt that they were too harsh, but as to whether they were actually doing this or just trying to get some views out of pushing controversial content, I also cannot say. I leave all this to the investigators and the courts, and I'm hoping that other mothers out there will take a cue from this because it is one thing giving birth, and it's another thing actually taking good care of your children. If you can do the latter, as in taking good care of your children, then you are actually a mother. Other than that, you just birth a child and you are not able to take good care of it. Let me know what you think about this whole case in the comment section. Let me know if you think Ruby Frank can beat this case or she's going down with her business partner, Jodi Hildebrandt. Now, each count, as they've been charged with, carries a prison sentence of about 15 years and a fine of up to 10,000 cedis. $10,000, sorry. And I think that this case is going to go a long way because among the things that are likely to come up for discussion has to do with the physical abuse and then the starvation or malnutrition that was apparent looking at the children, and then finally the trauma and emotional harm these kids may have gone through as a result of these things. And I'm suspecting at a point in time, these kids may have to be brought in to be interviewed by a clinical psychologist and maybe in the company of investigators also to get their version of how come they even got into that situation in the first place. So this is one of the cases that I think may travel some time, maybe not too long. I've observed that investigations and cases in the US are usually fast tracked better than in some other countries. So I don't expect it to drag so much. But I think no matter how long it lasts, there might be some twists and turns along the way. And I think that it's going to be an uphill battle for Ruby Franke and her defense team. Same for Jodi Hildebrandt and her defense team. Subscribe to the channel if you are yet to do so. Turn on post notifications and we'll catch you next time. Stay safe and keep an eye out.